Hey everyone, my name is Elio Narciso. I'm the co-founder and CEO at ScaleStack, and welcome again to the Revenue Engine Masters podcast. As you know, we dive deep into go-to-market, sales, marketing, ops, and like the ways that people that are inventing in the space are operating and transforming how businesses run their go-to-market today. Our guest today is Alan Gonsenhauser, the founder and CEO of Demand Revenue, great leader with a ton of experience. I think you've been like 11 times CMO, right? Which is incredible. And you have advised and continue to advise hundreds of marketing leaders. And your experience is particularly deep in private equity, PE back. You love like to advise their companies on like a customer centric type of strategy, and with lots of experience in SaaS, health tech, enterprise software. So I'm very excited because I'm passionate about all of this stuff. I typically focus more on sales than marketing, but marketing is always top front and center for me. So really looking forward to this chat. Welcome to the podcast, Alan. Anything that you want to add to that intro?
Thank you very much, Elio. I appreciate the invite, and I'm really excited about having this conversation. And happy to zig and zag wherever you wanna talk.
Thank you, thank you. So maybe the first thing I attended, actually co-hosted yesterday, like a roundtable in a room in beautiful San Francisco, where I'm at today, and we talked about like the role of sales versus the role of marketing, and the discussion was around, well, the role of sales is really to explain and illustrate and educate the customers how to work with us, while the role of marketing is to generate demand and to explain what the product does in a way that connects with customers. And so, two questions maybe for you. First of all, like, do you agree on that? And maybe what is your perspective on like the roles that sales and marketing facing customers have? And then maybe the second is like, where do you think is like marketing? Like, should marketing for B2B companies be under the CRO or should be like separate? And what do you see like effective companies implementing at the organization?
Okay. So I think the first question, the role of marketing versus sales. I think, first of all, in working with hundreds of companies, usually they fall down on alignment. So marketing, sales, product, customer success need to be on the same page. And there's an economic value of alignment. Companies that are well aligned and stay aligned grow 19% faster and are 15% more profitable. So we need to be on the same team internally with marketing and sales, and there are a lot of ways to do that and get to alignment. Secondly, the one thing I'll disagree with, it's not just sales role to educate the customer on the advantages. Marketing has a role in doing that early on when they develop the brand position and hopefully make it easier for sales, because 95% of prospects are not in a buying mode today. So they need to be nurtured. And when marketing develops a strong brand, not only awareness, but preference and what people feel about the brand, that's the future pipeline for sales. That'll give sales more at bats. And if they do a good job explaining the meaningful point of difference of the product to the right ideal customer profiles, they will be educated a little bit and think of your company before sales is able to have a conversation. So that means you'll have more at bats. Sales will probably have a higher win loss ratio. It'll give you more pricing power. And so that's part of marketing and sales working together on that, because and also marketing getting intent information. If only 5% of the companies are in a buying mode right now, you want to get intent information from your own website when, depending on the transaction size, the average selling price of what you're selling, you want to know when people are starting from the same company are starting to crowd your website or crowd the website of a competitor, because that means they're now in market looking for solutions like yours. So if they don't know who you are and you have no brand equity, when they start looking, it's very unlikely that you're going to win deals. So that's part of where marketing and sales need to work together towards common goals to develop in the mind of the prospect your point of differences. So when they are and nurture them along the way. So when they are in a buying mode, it'll be
Hmm.
easier for sales to
So
close
that's an
deals.
interesting stat. So like the 95% is like only 5% of companies, is that right? Or like does that apply? So companies are like looking to buy something
At any given time.
at any given time.
Right.
And then once they decide, because I agree with actually what you're saying, that like, indeed the discussion was like this. It's not the role of sales educating the customer necessarily, although yes, about the product, but it's mostly how to work with the company. So like, what are our processes and stuff,
Okay.
in order
Yeah.
to work with us.
Once they get in buying mode. Yeah.
Yes, once they get in buy mode. So of the 5%, when like you start, like in your experience, when they are looking for something, how much of the road they have already done by the time they're talking to sales?
Three
And
quarter.
so three
Yeah.
quarters, right? So
Yeah, they've
like
already
that's
done
also
the research. They've got different people on the buying committee that have done research. And I also have data on each member of the C suite and the percent that have needed to hear from you and know your brand to consider you as part of the short list. And it's in the 90s for each member of the C suite. So if they don't know who you are when they decide they're in buying mode, it's very unlikely you're going to be considered and get an at bat. That's why I say, your brand equity and the strength of your brand equity is your future pipeline. You may not be able
absolutely.
to measure the impact on this quarter or next quarter, but you need pipeline next year as well, right? Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
And so that has a lot of implications also for startups that are like, have like a really hard time because they have zero brand equity. But then if that's true, and that's 75% or, three quarters stat, whatever the number is,
Yeah,
yesterday we discussed about like
directionally.
80%. Why then, like, if it's so high, why, like, the stat that we normally use in SaaS is that, like, like 30% of the pipeline, actual like active pipeline, will convert. So like if they have done so much road to come to you, where do things fall apart, and what, if anything, can marketing do to increase the win rate of the actual pipeline in place?
Well, what marketing can do is build a differentiated brand and nurture people until they're ready to buy. And where deals fall in the sales pipeline, there's a really good book. I'm trying to think of the name of it. There's a difference between fear of missing out, FOMO, and fear of messing up. I'll think of the book in a minute, but there's a whole book that was written about that. The same person that wrote the Challenger sale. And that is,
Okay.
sales have typically sold, hey, you don't want to miss out. This is something that will, make you more productive and you'll save money and et cetera, et cetera. But lately in this market, there's also a fear of messing up, that if I make the decision to invest in something and it doesn't work, it's on me. I failed.
Uh-huh.
So that's got to be part of the sales process to de-risk some of those fears that buying folks sometimes have.
I like that.
That's more of
Is
a
this
sales.
Brett Adamson and Matt Dixon? Is this the book?
Matt Dixon. Yes.
Yeah, Matt Dixon. Okay.
It's
I'm
one of
just
Matt
looking.
Dixon's books.
Okay,
I'm trying
very
to
good.
think of the name right now. It's a really good sales book.
Okay, great. Is the Challenger sale, but like you're referring to a different
No,
book
no,
that
it's
he
it's,
wrote.
it's after that. It's
Okay,
it's called The Jolt Effect.
okay,
That's the name of the book. The Jolt Effect by Matt Dixon and a few others. Brent Addison just came out with another book called The Frame Making Sale. He just came out with it like a week ago.
okay.
I just
Very
heard him
good.
present
I
it.
love this. And so this has huge implications. I mean, like, for instance, for a company like ours, like, we started like a few years ago, we're still building that brand equity. A lot of the brand equity is still on the founder, which is like, the
Right.
reason why I'm traveling like crazy and like, showing my face everywhere that needs to be shown.
It's good.
what are the like maybe, and you work with a lot of like private equity backed companies, no? So like they're typically like in a certain stage of their growth.
Later stage, typically a
Yeah,
couple
later.
100 million and up. Yeah.
And so where do you see like the advantage that they have? Do you see like companies like typically at the P stage that have already have developed that like brand equity, or you see that they still have to do a lot of work even at that stage, not just to
It's
maintain it,
all
but
over
to
the
build?
map. It's all over the map, and sometimes big companies have similar issues as smaller companies. If no one invested in brand, and I see alignment issues, as I mentioned, I see issues not being aligned on what the ideal customer profile is.
Hmm.
Who are those prospects that you can close easily, you can retain, and you can grow? Because you're a really great match for what they need, and you can give them a remarkable customer experience. But what I was going to say, Elio, is companies usually go through different phases. When you're a startup, you have to get problem market fit first. You have to solve a problem that people care about and are willing to pay for. And if you're successful at that, the next phase is product market fit. When you have products and you begin to scale your organization. And if you're successful there, the next phase is platform market fit. You've created a platform, which is much more profitable. And the questions that you have at each of those phases are different. And that's
Absolutely.
part of go to market alignment as you go beyond the pivot points that all organizations go through. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I mean, from the startup perspective, I mean, another piece that we add at the beginning is founder market fit. Typically, like,
Yeah.
not all
Yep.
founders are equal. So you do want to see that at the very beginning. It continues after because I think that like founders that are not passionate about the market, like, won't create great companies. The problem market fit, I would say it is important, like in the verbalization to me. And so I usually talk about like message market fit, which is similar because I mean, you have to be able to define the problem in a way that
Yeah,
resonates with people. Because sometimes people
absolutely.
don't know that they have that problem until you tell them. And then, like, yes, I mean, that's clearly a problem. I mean, we are starting to hear from people, oh, like, I have these two people in my team that are wasting an enormous amount of time, like, doing manual work. Is it like, well, that's exactly what we solve for with our AI platform, no? And so the messaging as it resonate with the problem is very
Couldn't
important.
agree more. Absolutely.
Awesome stuff. Let's talk about another topic that I'm obviously very passionate about, which is data. Oh, and so what are like, you talk a lot about like customer centric. And so what I'm curious about, maybe like if you want to define customer centric for us, but then I'm interested in what data do you need in order to develop and then implement marketing strategies that are customer centric.
Well, first of all, I'll say there's a lot of dirty data out there, a lot of filthy data,
Yeah.
especially larger companies that have done a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and they're trying to consolidate Salesforce instances and marketing automation instances. And some of them can't even get a good list of who their customers are. So you have to, garbage in, garbage out. You have to make data cleanliness a thing and resource it properly. But in terms of data that's customer centric, I'm a big believer in doing net promoter score the right way, not having it as a vanity metric, but asking your company, asking your customers, what's the likelihood they would recommend your product to a business associate, friend, whatever, 0 to 10. And you look at, the promoters versus the detractors and the passives, and it's not just the score, it's the comments they give you about how they feel. And companies that have been successful at improving their customer experience have actually taken that feedback as gold,
Mm.
and they've acted on they first, you know, put and I've done this, a cross-functional team together to analyze and categorize the feedback. Then act on the feedback to try to fix the issues, and very importantly, communicate back that you listened and you did something. And
Yes,
those are companies that are continuously improving. I don't want to get too many books, but there's an excellent book by the founder of NPS, Fred Reichheld. It's called Winning on Purpose. And it's all about the right way to implement NPS and what the value is. And again, 5%, he's saying only 5% of companies get it right. So you have to be really customer centric, not just give it lip service, but run your company that way and your employees that way, make it part of the culture. Does that help? I mean, that's
absolutely.
one
Yeah.
source of information.
I think it's super important. And I think it's super important what you've said that like you have to do something with that data because I mean now
Yes,
we have this data and then you don't change the way you do things and you don't impact like the way you explain or like the way your sales teams or like teams in general, go-to-market teams interact with customers, then it's like a missed
their
opportunity.
input is gold. Even if it's
Yes.
negative, it's gold. They could just move away and not do business with you anymore, and you won't know why. They tell you. And as long as they're in your ideal customer profile, sometimes you bring on customers because they're easy to bring on, but they're not the right fit. And that hurts your brand. But
Yeah. And on the topic of filthy data, like that, maybe I'll use that. We deal with a lot of bad data. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest like impacts that we have at the beginning of a collaboration with a customer, like, agentically we like clean at scale any CRM.
great.
But what's interesting is that people think that that's a nice to have still and not a must have. And I always think that in business, people vote with money, right? And so to me, is like if you pay for something, it means that you really want that thing, and that thing is a must. And so recently, we sold a massive deal with a customer, which took us a very long time because the positioning was we need to clean the data in the CRM. And yes, like we know we have to do it. But when we switched the label and we said, look, if you do this data cleaning, then you will be able to better enrich your leads, and this will convert into such and such pipeline. And then, like, you will create like the ability to generate insights for like social media campaigns. And then we got their attention. We did the pilot. It was phenomenally successful exactly in those categories. And so instead of being, this is a data cleaning and enrichment exercise, this is actually a growth marketing. Then, like,
Exactly.
people
Data enrichment sounds boring. As
sounds
as
boring. It sounds like
critical as it
nice
is.
to have. As
Right.
critical as it is, it sounds like a nice to have. But I think more and more, especially with AI, it's becoming like crucial that executive, especially at larger companies,
Yes.
understand like what they can do with good data because it's so important.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a really good example because I work a lot with CMOs and, general managers. I've been both in my career. And it's important for CMOs to be general managers and speak in the language of business. For example, sometimes people say brand is a dirty word. Oh, we can't invest all this money in brand. But if you're speaking to a CFO, you have to learn how to communicate that in language the CFO, the CEO, and the board can appreciate. So if you say, look, brand equity is our future pipeline. Do you want pipeline a year from now? Maybe it's not going to help this quarter or the next quarter, but it's going to create pipeline a year from now. Number two, we're going to have more at bats. Number three, it's going to be easier for our salespeople to close deals. Number four, we're going to have more pricing power. Number five, brand is an intangible asset on the balance sheet. So it's not just, hey, we need more money for brand. It's like, why? How is it going to impact EBITDA? How is it going to impact long term? Or, for example, some organizations are over rotated on new business logos. And you want to bring in, as I've mentioned, the right new business logos, but your revenue and profitability are in the rear view mirror. If you really want to impact your future revenue and profitability, it's all about customer led growth. It's all about bringing the right customers on board you can keep, you can retain, and you can grow over time. And that's going to be your future financial performance. So
100%.
creating a remarkable customer experience, bringing on the right customers, retaining and growing them, that's how you build businesses. So I'm a big believer in customer-led growth. I consider myself this term, but I call myself a customer capitalist
Yeah.
because I think future
I love
financial
that.
performance is dependent on customer-led growth.
Love that. How can I mean, everybody's talking AI and we
Are
do
you tired of
AI.
AI yet?
No, I'm not tired at all. I'm actually so
It's
excited.
every single day.
But about talking, about is the
Yeah,
talking that is getting a
yeah.
little bored. And so what I'm looking, I mean, is for examples from your experience of stuff that you've already seen
Yes.
implemented at scale and like where AI is changing. And I'm not so interested about like the individual usage of AI, which is now like 80% of people are using like some AI tool for their own stuff, and it works, and we're getting smarter on how to use it and
Yes.
gain but it's around like company-wide implementation. What have you seen working that it's beyond like just a pilot?
Well, content creation is a big area. A lot of people are using it for content creation. But you have to be careful. You have to check everything very carefully. It's got to pass the smell test. And AI does hallucinate, so you've got to be very, very careful there. And I've seen applications of AI in BDR and sales groups to follow up faster from, let's say, trade shows or leads that may not be as important but may turn into future business, where BDRs and AEs and salespeople are too busy to follow up on all the leads. You can follow up with AI immediately, much faster, and then you can kind of bifurcate them into ones you care about or ones you want to continue nurturing. So it allows organizations to be a lot more responsive, which people are looking for. If someone asks a question, they want something right away. What I would say about AI, and I just did a innovation series on AI. It's on my website. I didn't mention it, by the way. My website is demandrevenue.com. That's the name of my company.
Perfect.
And at the bottom, there's a green strip where you can look at the 7 articles we put out on AI.
Very
But
good.
to net them out, AI is excellent at convergent thinking, at summarizing what happened in the past.
Hmm.
And it's very productive doing that. So you can summarize huge amounts of data and extract information from it faster than humans can. What it's not good at is divergent thinking. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So, if you remember Blockbuster, where you would rent videos and get
Yeah.
them, they made their money on late fees. AI would tell them to get more late fees, be more productive in how you collect them, how you bill them. It would have totally missed Netflix and what happened there. That was a disruptive innovation. In fact, Blockbuster had an opportunity to acquire Netflix, and
Yeah.
they passed because it was too much of a threat culturally to how they made money. Same thing, the biggest company where I'm from, Rochester, New York, Eastman Kodak, used to be huge. They made their money on film. They had all the early patents for digital photography, but it was too much of a threat to their business model, and they didn't do anything, and then Fuji's and everybody else took over the market, and where are they today? So AI is not gonna be good at helping you with strategy unless you really know how to prompt it well. It'll help you at what Christensen calls sustaining innovations, how to get more productive, but not disruptive innovations. So, we still need
And
humans for that.
I absolutely love this divergent convergent. And to me, that's an explanation of why, in our experience, the biggest return on investment on AI at the enterprise level, not individual level, is for back office stuff.
Yeah.
Because
You
that's
know
where there is an enormous opportunity to do like things faster, better, which don't need like invention, but need processing stuff that already exists in the back office, and that we do too manual, too like scattered, too.
precisely.
And
Yeah.
so it's a great explanation of why and there was a report, like an infamous report, from MIT recently that said like 95% of the AI investments fail. But this is one of the things that they said. The back office is where like companies are getting the biggest ROI. And one of the explanations is for sure what you just beautifully illustrated in the definition of AI. Very good. We're getting to a close. I'm very curious about your work with like PE-backed firms. I've been owned by PE. It wasn't easy. I've run now like a VC-backed companies, worked at Amazon. So I've sort of seen, like the three dimensions. And I've also had a company that wasn't, backed by investors at all. What is in your like experience at the level of like execution, right? For like the executives, like they have to execute strategies. The difference with PE-backed companies versus like VC-backed versus like public companies, etc.
Okay. Well, first of all, PE-backed companies are probably profitable. They're probably bigger, maybe 200 million. I work in upper middle market, 200 million, let's say, into the billions. And they generally have a 5 to 7 year time frame for what they call value creation. And so their most important metric is something called MOIC, multiples on invested capital. They want to get a return on their investment and maximize that return. And usually during those 5 to 7 years, if they get on at the beginning of the cycle, they have a value creation plan. The first year, they need to show some quick impact. And so there'll be a lot of pressure to make sure there's a revenue engine that's working and they can show some impact from their investment the first year. And then kind of in the middle, they're building infrastructure, people, process, technology, data, analytics, brand equity, pricing. And they're building all those things up to grow the company, not just on a short-term basis with new logos, but on a long-term basis with retention, metrics like net revenue retention, lifetime value, all of those things we were talking about before. And then in the third phase, they're dressing the company up for sale. So branding is really important again, and making the asset look really attractive, either for an IPO or for a larger, maybe another PE firm to buy. They may do some cost down to goose profitability a little bit, but the good ones that I've experienced with are willing to invest in brand, and they're willing to rebrand, and they're willing to help these companies grow with a value creation plan. So it can be a challenging environment for some people because there's a need for speed and results. But if you're successful in a PE-backed company, it opens up all kinds of opportunities. First of all, you can make a ton of money, at the sale. And secondly, you can work with other portfolio companies. So if you've done a good job, in your role working with one, you have a whole network of other companies you can work with. It's a fast-paced, exciting, sometimes challenging environment, but it's a great, I think, a great place to be. I really enjoy it.
Very good. Alan, this was
And what
great. I
I
loved
do,
it.
they'll either bring me on as an interim CMO or I'll coach the CMOs,
The
coach
CMO.
and mentor the CMOs to drive success for their companies and their careers.
Very good. The clarity of all these different things that we discussed was fantastic. So I really appreciate this
Thank you.
conversation, Alan. And thank you for being here. And thank you for everyone
My
listening.
pleasure. Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me, Elio. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.